we got to, I think it was Hillcrest. We got to Hillcrest Hospital. I don't remember anything there. I don't know. I have no idea what happened there. I apparently got life-flighted, and I took a helicopter ride that I don't even remember. But I got life-flighted to Metro. I guess my mom had made it. And I couldn't, like, you know, they had, the way that they had to get a hold of my mom, they had to call one of our friend's parents, and she had to call my cousin, and my cousin ended up driving to my mom's house and waking her up, and they drove to Metro. I was able to see my mom, and I remember telling them, like, I forgot what happened to Dave, you know what I mean, and, I was in, you know, they were taking me, they had to do emergency surgery because they didn't know, like, what was going on, because there's all this blood, but they didn't know where it was coming from, and, I remember making them stop, like, you know, I was on the gurney, and I told them to stop, and yeah, I think they were telling me, like, who was there and stuff like that, you know what I mean, like, oh, you know, like, your mom's here or something, I don't know, but I remember saying stop, you know, and, you know, I was like, let me talk to my mom, and I remember, and I was like, no, you need to give me, like, 5 minutes, just let me talk to my mom. And I told my, you know, I was like, Mom, where's Dave? And she said, I don't know if she said he's in the waiting room or whatever, and I said no. And I was like, you need to get Dave. And she was like, he's okay, and I'm like, I need to see him. And I'm like, I'm not going anywhere until I see him, until I know he's okay, until I physically see that he is okay. And I guess the nurse went to go get him or something, I don't know, but he was getting looked at because he had road rash all of his hands and he was, like, bleeding or whatever. And my mom told me that he was getting his hands looked at, and, you know, and he'd be there when I got out. And then after talking to her, I was out again. So I went into surgery, and I think I was put, I don't know if I was put into a medical induced coma or if it was just anesthesia. I'm not sure. But I remember, I don't know if it was that day or what day it was really, but I remember my friends, 3 of my friends came to see me, and, you know, I had a tube down my throat and all of that, and I remember seeing them and hearing them, but I don't think, I didn't say anything because I couldn't, but I do remember them being there. And I know, I remember them telling me that, you know, when, like, they would say, like, that they're here, or they would talk to me, you know, my heart rate would go up. And, also, my dad came. I remember, I think, this was more along the lines of a day later, maybe. I don't know, because I was trying to talk. I had a huge tube down my throat, and I remember seeing my dad, and I kept trying to talk to him. I don't remember what I was saying, but I remember he was saying, he's like, Kristin, you know, I can't hear you. I don't know what you're saying. You have a tube down your throat. Like, and he said, you know, Dave's here. And then I looked over and I saw Dave, and I just felt like this huge, you know, relief, I guess, that, like, I finally knew that he was okay. And I was out again. So the next morning, I think it was 5 in the morning, they took the tube out of my throat before this. And I woke up. I had no idea where I was. It was dark. And I almost kind of like freaked out. And I moved to like look around where, like, and see where I was, and you know, and when I moved, I just had this like huge wash pain over me and my stomach, and I lift up my gown and I see this whole line of staples, and I was like, holy crap, you know. And so I called the nurse in, and I really wanted to talk to somebody because it was dark. I don't know. I think it was like 5 in the morning. But it was dark, and I wanted to know, like, what was going on, you know? And I literally think I harassed this nurse for about an hour and a half. And they're like, you can't call anybody. Like, we don't have a phone down here. I was like, how do you not have a phone? Like, you know, I was like, what do you mean you don't have a phone? So the nurse ended up giving me her cell phone, and I think I called Dave, and I called my mom, and I called, like, my mom knows it's me because I always call her like 1,000 times, and that's because she never picks up the phone. Okay, so our power ended up going out yesterday, so I had to stop filming, and now it's the next day, and I didn't realize that this was going to be so long, but starting from where I left off, I think I was talking about being in the hospital, and you know, I called my mom or whatever, and they said that they were going to be there, you know, when visiting hours were open. But so once my mom and I don't know, I think it was just my mom, maybe my mom and I don't know, I don't remember, but once my mom got there, I found out what had happened to me. My femur broke, and they had to put a rod and 4 screws in my femur, and then my pelvis was fractured in 7 places. My camera is not straight. Okay, there we go. So my pelvis was fractured in 7 places. My bladder had ruptured, and that's why there was all the blood, and that's why, you know, like, I had to have the surgery, and they didn't know why I was bleeding or whatever. So there's that, and then tons of road rash. I have like 30 to 40 or something scars. So that was that. What else? Oh yeah, my pinky was broken, and it never went back to the way it should be. I can't, like, that hurts to do. And then a couple of my toes were broken, some, you know, ribs were fractured. I think that was the main part of, like, the fractures. I found out they took my appendix out. Yeah, they took my appendix out. And I have, well, I had a huge chunk of, well, it wasn't, what happened was, is there was road rash on my foot. My shoes flew off, by the way, too. There was a huge, like, chunk of road rash that wasn't healing, and they had to reopen it, like peel the skin off and like clean it out. So I had this huge hole. It was about the size of a quarter, and if you put 2 quarters together, that's like how deep it was. And yeah, it was crazy. So, you know, when I was down in ICU or whatever, Dave, finally, I got to see him, and he brought me McDonald's, and I was eating and everything, but my stomach started really hurting, and we came to find out that I wasn't digesting my food right, because internally my body was still like paralyzed from the anesthesia that they gave me. And so they had to, I was so mad. They said that they were going to stick a tube down my nose so it could suck out all of the, you know, like everything that I ate or whatever, and like all the, I don't know, whatever they had to do. But I told them no. I was like, no. And Dave stepped outside, and she's like, alright, we're just gonna, you know, put this down your nose and you can just take a deep breath. And I was like, no, you're not. No way. You're not. No, don't touch me. And then the one nurse grabbed me, and the other one shoved it down up my nose and down my throat, and I was choking, and I was so mad. Dave came back in, and I'm sitting there just like, I was so mad. Oh my goodness, it was kind of funny. But yeah, so I ended up moving up to another floor, and this, to be honest with you, being in the hospital, this was not the funnest thing ever. Like, seriously, it was awful. And like being in the ICU, you know, it wasn't fun. I had a group of nurses that I really liked, and then a group of aides too that were awesome, and they, luckily for me, that they spent most of the day with me, you know, like their shift was during the day, so I, you know, didn't have to really put up with some other people that I had dealt with before. Yeah, because it was just, it just wasn't fun. You know, I had a catheter in, and you know, from being an STNA, I just know, like, what that's like. You know what I mean? And it's just, I remember the one time this one nurse was working, I don't know, I guess it was a crazy day for them, which I, like, understand, you know, but what had happened was, like, you know, my bag was full, and I called her to empty it, and she said, okay, give me 1 second, and then she left again, and she didn't come back for I don't even know how long. And it got to the point, like, if, like, you know, my bladder ruptured, so I have, like, stitches or whatever in there and everything like that, and you know, having the catheter in the urine, like, with it being full, it was backing back up into my bladder, and it could cause a serious infection, which could cause me to have to do a surgery all over again. So I started freaking out. I was literally pushing on my stomach to keep the, you know, the urine from, I know, TMI, I'm so sorry, but just to keep it down. And I told my dad, I was like, you know, because my dad was there at the time, I was like, see that cup over there? I was like, get that cup, I'll empty this goddamn thing myself, you know. And then finally, Like, he told her she's about to empty it herself. And she came in and she emptied it. So that was that. And then another time, like another bad experience, one of the doctors there, I don't know if he knew what was going on with me. I think he was checking my road rash that was on my back. And he didn't really, like, I don't know if he didn't know that most of my road rash was right, like, on my pelvis. So I don't know if he knew that it was fractured or not, but he said that, he's like, I have to, you know, I have to check the road rash on your back or whatever. And this was actually before this whole catheter thing happened. This is when I was still in the ICU, and I told him, you know, can you just give me a minute, because it really, I couldn't move. It really hurt to move. And he said, well, we can either do it now or later, and it's gonna be, the pain is gonna be the same. So he shoved me, like, where you're supposed to, normally where you're supposed to turn a person is you grab them by their, you know, their shoulder and kind of like their pelvis. And so he did it, like, in kind of a crappy way. He, like, literally shoved me over, and I ended up screaming because I don't think he knew that it was fractured. And he hit my, because where I was fractured, it's on each side, on 2 on the top, and then I think there was 3, like, right on the bottom. So it was like, you know, I don't know. I was so mad, you know what I mean? It was just, like, it was so unnecessary. And I just couldn't even, ugh. It was awful. I just remember I wanted to slap him, and I bet I could have if I could have gotten up, you know? But, yeah, so I was at that hospital for, I don't know. Oh, by the way, and also I couldn't eat anything for about 8 to 9 days. Like, I had, you know, nutrients were getting pumped into me by a machine. And my friends would actually sneak me food. One of my friends, she worked at McDonald's, and we had this favorite drink where you mix pink lemonade and Fruitopia, and it was like my favorite. And she'd always bring me food from McDonald's, and it was hilarious because I would be, like, you know, sneaking, you know, I'd hide it from the nurses, and I'd sneak a drink, or I'd sneak the food, and then it comes right out of my, like, tube, and it was just like, I just wanted the taste, you know, of just food. It was, like, ridiculous. But so yeah, I was in there for about 2 weeks, and you know, it was just hard, like, you know, having to do physical therapy. I was in a wheelchair. I don't know. Yeah, it was really hard. I remember the one day, you know, I was just having a really bad day. It was like, you know, just one where you know, I was just really mad about everything that happened, and I didn't want to get up, and I didn't want to get out of bed, and everything like that. And then I saw kind of like what was happening to me. You know, I realized, you know, I was looking at my mom and Dave's face, and, you know, just my dad and everybody, and, you know, they just had such a sad look on their face, like, you know, like, not believing that this happened. And, you know, being told, like, I don't even know how many times, we don't know how you're alive, or we don't know how your daughter's alive, we don't know how, you know, and it was I don't know, it was hard. So I saw them, and I saw, like, just how upset they were just about, you know, it's just, you could see the stress and the anxiety and just everything. And it was that day that I realized I needed to be strong for them. You know what I mean? I realized I'm like, I need to be strong for them. And I decided to get up, and I wanted to go outside. So from then on, it was probably about maybe 4 to 5 days. I was outside all day, every day, and I sat out there with Dave or whoever, or, you know, and it was just, they'd be there around 8 or 9, and I would go outside around then, and the only time we ever came back in was to get food, and we'd go right back outside to eat, and then I wouldn't come back in until 8 o'clock at night when the visiting hours were over. And it was like just being outside, you know, just, I don't know what it was, but it felt a lot better. Dave told me that, you know, having to leave me was probably like one of the hardest things, you know, he had to do every day. He said he'd get home, and, you know, I was supposed to be there, and I wasn't, and it just didn't feel right. And it was the same for me. I hated to see him leave. You know, like, we've just been through something that, like, you know, we can't even explain, like, or understand, or, you know what I mean? Like, something that you don't think is going to happen to you has just happened to us, and, you know, and you can't be with, you know, that person and get through it together, you know. Like, he said he was just really upset, and, you know, he hated leaving me just because, you know, I was supposed to be with him, and I wasn't at the time. So after, like, all of this, I was supposed to, I don't know, some stuff happened. I was supposed to stay there for physical therapy, but something ended up not working out. So I stayed there, like, a day over, or a couple days, maybe even, like, I think it was, like, 2 or 3, maybe. And then I got moved to closer to home, which was actually right by Dave's work. And that hospital, doing the physical therapy there and everything like that. And I just, you know, it was one of those things where I just moved very quickly, and I just couldn't wait to go home, you know. And I remember the day that we had to go home for the house, like, to see if my wheelchair was accessible and I could get through things, and they were teaching me how to, you know, just be in a wheelchair and, like, what I should do. And I mean, I really already knew everything to know because I was an STNA, so I was actually doing things, like, on my own before the, like, when I was in physical therapy. You know, I remember I would go to the bathroom by myself, and the one night nurse hated it. But it's just like, you know, I know everything that I need to know about being in a wheelchair. I know how to, you know, it's just meh. But, so we got home, and we had, a coming home party, pretty much, for me, and my friends came, and, my dad and my mom were there, and, so, you know, it was fun. I remember the first day that I got home, I had the biggest steak ever. Dave got me, like, a 3-pound steak, and it was huge. It was, like, the size of my head, you know. And so that was nice, and it was just, I was glad to be home, even though, like, it was definitely an adjusting thing, but it was definitely glad to be home. And then I was able to walk again. I was in the wheelchair for 3 months. The first, I think it was August 22nd, was the day that I started walking again, or they took the wheelchair away. and told me I didn't need it anymore. And it was, you know, it was crazy to be able to walk again. I don't know, it was, you know, throughout the whole time of just being in the wheelchair and everything that happened. And, you know, I had to go to the doctors like almost at least twice or 3 times a month just to get checked to see how, you know, everything was doing. And also because when I was in therapy, I found a hole in the back of my leg, and it ended up getting infected somehow, and I still can't feel that part of my leg. Like but it got infected, and it was like huge, and it was just really, really weird, and they didn't know what was wrong with it. So I had to go to the emergency room, and they thought it was cellulite. I don't know, but turns out it wasn't. What I think might have happened, and some others, you know, like, they were tossing around the idea too, because what happens when, like, you know, being in the accident and, like, all that gravel and stuff like that, if something gets embedded into your skin, your body will push it out and cause a hole. So, they think that something might have gotten in there, or, you know, like, there was also a possible chance of me rejecting the rod, not, you know, like, I don't know, or it could have happened during the surgery. That's what I mean by, like, you know, doing the surgery, if there's something embedded into your skin will push it out. So either, you know, something happened, and then there was also the fact that, you know, the factor of somebody's hands not being cleaned during the surgery, or the rod not being cleaned well enough, or the screws or whatever. So they never knew or could pinpoint it, but I was getting looked at for a while and monitored, you know, like I said, I had an appointment almost like 3 times a month, and just, you know, to get checked. But moving on to when after I was able to walk, I started realizing, like, I don't know, my doctor and all doctors said I shouldn't be in pain anymore, and I started realizing that, like, no, I was still in a ton of pain, and it was just getting really bad, you know, and it was always there. And finally, I found out I couldn't be an STNA anymore, or I had to resign, because my leave was up, and we still didn't know if I was able to work, and so I had to resign being an STNA, and then I found out that I had fibromyalgia. And I was, you know, I kept telling my doctor, like, no, like, this shouldn't be right, this pain, you know what I'm saying? And it was just, like, I'm like, you guys are all telling me I shouldn't be feeling this pain anymore, but I do, and it's horrible, you know. So then I ended up finding out I had fibromyalgia, and, you know, I'm starting to wonder if I had it before the accident, it just wasn't as, you know, it just wasn't really prominent as it is now, and maybe the accident, like, brought it on. But yep, so then now I'm just going through the motions of everyday life, I guess you could say. I don't know, I know that there's, like, even I have come to, like, find out and realize that even with the accident, like, being, you know, a very traumatic thing, it was a blessing in disguise, because, you know, I still have, like, I have this fear in me now of, like, things, like, you know, just, like, I'm afraid I'm gonna die young, just because my life was almost taken like that. And I know it's really like that, you know, like you never have the promise of tomorrow, but you know, that's a known, you know, we all know that. But being faced with that moment, you know, like I think that is why I was like, I don't know, and I think that's why I just have that fear, and you know, it's the cause of a lot of my problems. But I finally looked at it as a blessing. Well, I kind of did like towards the end, once I started walking again. I just started seeing where I was going, and because if it wasn't for the accident, me and Dave probably wouldn't be together, because we were kind of split up at the time. And then if we, you know, not being together, I wouldn't have my son. And then, you know, I wouldn't have gotten FM. I wouldn't have, you know, I would still be working. I wouldn't have had to stay home. I wouldn't be able to finally be doing what I love to do, which is makeup and this right now. And I've always just wanted to tell this story, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, no matter, life is always going to throw some crazy curveball at you, or some, you know, but just know that, for one, you're not alone. Everybody goes through something, and two, going through this is only going to get you to where you're supposed to be. And that's what I realized. Like, I finally, you know, like, for once, like, I used to always wonder when I was younger, like, you know, what am I meant to do, or what is my purpose? And all I can say is it's the way you take them. You know, it's the way you take that situation and the direction you go with it, you know? Because there's two ways you can go, and you can go in the negative, and you can be negative about it, and be like, why me, and, you know, just on and on. Or you can just, you know, be like, you know what, this sucks, but there's, you know, it was meant to, everything happens for a reason. Maybe I don't know that reason yet, but hopefully it'll, you know, I will find that out one day. And that's what it was. And sitting here today, I'm going to tell you right now, looking back, I see all the steps that were taken to get me to where I wanted to be. And now, finally, I'm doing my dream. And even though, you know, it's like, you know, it's hard. It's not, I mean, it's definitely not easy, you know, but I really wouldn't have it any other way. I guess you could say, like, I wouldn't change a thing. And I'd go through it all over again just to get me, if it was going to get me back to here, you know? Like, and that's just how I look at it. You know, I got my boyfriend back. I now have a beautiful son, and I'm starting my new adventure with you guys. So, I think that's what I'm going to wrap this video up at. Yeah, so don't forget to like, subscribe, share, donate, and stay tuned for my motorcycle makeup video, makeup tutorial, and another giveaway. And I will see you guys soon. Thanks.